of January. We had one or two things that held us up a little bit, but we shouldered them through that first session. But before we continue with our proceedings for today, I just would want to read on behalf of the Commission a statement that we wanted them to put on record. As we embark on this second session of the TRRC hearings, please allow us to update the public on the modest progress we have made so far. In spite of a few technological hitches, our first session, which focused on the July 1994 coup, went very well. The Commission heard testimonies from 13 witnesses, most of them serving or retired officers of the Gambia security forces. The evidence that came from these testimonies puts the Commission in a good position to establish a reasonably accurate historical record of how and why the coup of July 22nd, 1994 happened, who the main players were, and how institutional failures and the policy lapses contributed to its success. A good picture also emerges of the nature and the extent of human rights violations that occurred during and immediately after the coup. We are happy to announce at this point that the Commission will spend the first few days of this second session to hearing more testimonies directly relevant to the 1994 coup. As the public has already been informed, this second session will focus mainly on the events of November 11, 1994, when a number of soldiers lost their lives. Much like the coup, the Commission is interested in hearing the truth of how and why the November 20, or through the truth and why November 11th happened, who the main actors were, and ultimately the whereabouts of those who disappeared. We are confident that this session will yield invaluable insight into the true circumstances surrounding an event that, until now, is shrouded in mystery. We invite the general public to help us get to the bottom of what happened on November 11th, 1994, in the name of justice and healing. According to our work plan, this is the second session, second of 8 sessions scheduled for 2019. Each session will last for 3 weeks. 1 week of each month will be devoted to committee work and a review of outreach activities that may not be possible during sittings. The public will be kept informed about future sessions. As we begin this second session, we want to remind the general public that the TRRC is not a court of law. It is not a witch hunt, a witch hunting exercise against any individual or institution. We want to emphasize that point. Whatever we do it in pursuit of the objectives of the Commission, as mandated by the TRRC Act, namely, quote, create an impartial historical record of violations and abuses of human rights from July 1994 to January 2017 in order to promote healing and reconciliation, respond to the needs of the victims, address impunity, prevent a repetition of the violations and abuses some have suffered by making recommendations for the establishment of appropriate preventive mechanisms, including institutional and legal reforms. Establish and make known the fate or the whereabouts of disappeared victims. Provide victims an opportunity to relate their own accounts of the violations and abuses suffered, and to grant reparations to victims in appropriate cases. We are and will remain resolutely committed to the attainment of these objectives. Throughout our mandate period, this is what we would be focusing on. The TRRC is a victim-centered exercise. The Commission will always be guided by this principle. We have noticed an emerging trend whereby persons who feel that they have been adversely mentioned or who possess some information about matters being testified about would go to the press to make statements that are aimed at contradicting the testimony made before the Commission. The TRRC's provisional rules of procedure mandate that persons who have been adversely mentioned be afforded the opportunity to state their own side of the story by way of a written statement or a personal appearance. These persons are being directly contacted by the Commission, served them with notices of adverse mention, and are formally invited to respond to the allegations. It is therefore not necessary for such individuals to attempt to litigate the issues in the public media. Meanwhile, members of the public and the armed and security forces who have information or are victims of human rights violations and abuses during the mandate period are requested and are strongly encouraged to come forward and submit complaints. As always, we seek the prayers, support, and understanding of the general public as we welcome you to this second session of the TRRC hearings. But before we proceed with the beginning of our day, may I call on our religious leaders to offer some prayers through us. Imam C, you have the floor.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين وإن تستفتحوا فقد جاءكم الفتح نصر من الله وفتح قريب وبشر المؤمنين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل أعوذ برب الفلق من شر ما خلق ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب ومن شر النفاثات في العقد ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل أعوذ برب الناس ملك الناس إله الناس من شر وسواس الخناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما صلى الله تعالى عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.
Thank you very much, Imam C. Bishop, have the floor.
Gracious and eternal Father, we continue to bring the TRRC before your presence this second session of our hearing. We continue to ask that by your goodness, your mercy, your grace, your love and your compassion to every humankind throughout the whole face of the globe, particularly to those of this nation, the Gambia. As we seek out the truth and as we seek forgiveness and reconciliation and reparation, we pray, Lord, that you will guide each and every one that will come here to testify, to speak the truth, nothing but the truth, so that, Lord, the healing process will continue in this land, and the Never Again campaign will become a reality in this nation. We ask for your guidance, and by Holy Spirit's protection, in Jesus' mighty name we pray, praise, and thanksgiving. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Bishop. Council, are we ready with today's witness?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Commissioners. Good morning to you all. Yes, indeed, we are ready to proceed with the next witness.
You may proceed and bring in the witness, please.
May I ask that the witness be ushered in, please? Kindly swear in the witness, please.
I, Mamadou Kadi Cham,
I, Mamadou Kadi Cham,
do swear that
do swear that
I'll speak the truth,
I will speak the truth,
the whole truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you.
Please. Good morning, Mr. Cham. Thank you for agreeing to come and testify before the TRRC. You have been briefed earlier about the use of the microphone. Remember to always switch it on when you are about to speak by pressing the green button on the middle of the equipment in front of you. Also do allow for 3 seconds or 5 seconds between our speeches. I'd also do the same. I understand you speak very fast, very comfortable with your subject matter, but please, on this particular occasion, speak a bit slowly. We want the Gambian people to hear what you have to say. Are we together, sir?
Very well. Thank you.
Turn off the microphone after your speech. Thank you, sir. Sir, my name is Esa Mbaifal. Seated together with me, assisting me in this work are Ms. Horeja Balagay, Deputy Lead Counsel, Mrs. Sagar Thomas Jahate, Counsel, and Ms. Maria Masingate, Counsel. Sir, this morning we would want you to talk about 4 important topics. The first one is a formal matter. We want to know who you are as a person, your full names, biographical information. The second topic is to deal with 1994 coup d'etat and what you know about it and your relationship with some of the personalities who were involved. 3 is the human rights violations that you suffered between 1994 and up to the time the Jarrah government was removed from power. And the fourth topic would be what you have to say to the Gambian people in view of the experiences that you've had, with a view to helping this nation to put it on the right course for development and the right course for respect for rule of law and human rights. Are we together, sir?
Yes, we are. Thank you.
Can you kindly tell us your full names, please?
My full names are Alhaji Muhammadu Kadi Cham, commonly known in the urban area Banjul as MC Cham, in the rural areas as Mama Cham. In Fula tribe I belong to, Mamadou is normally referred to as Mama.
Could you kindly speak, perhaps you should draw the microphone closer to you, sir, so that way the volume would be higher. Thank you very much, sir. Could he be assisted? Yes, thank you. Can you give us a brief description of your biographical information, where you went to school and your training and work experience?
Thank you. I received primary education from 1945 at St. George's School, Basse Mansajang, starting with Basse and ending up in Mansajang in 1946. I attended St. Augustine's Secondary School 51 to 56 in Banjul. 57, I attended the clerical school in the Quadrangle, which was just established.
Okay, sir, just to get it clear, you started primary school at St. George's in 1945, right?
Correct.
And then you moved on to St. Augustine's, which you call St. Augustine's. I think those of us who went to St. Augustine should really look into that and try to call the school by its proper name. So you went to St. Augustine's in 1951 to 1956, correct?
Correct.
And then you went to clerical school from 1956 to 1957, yes?
I attended the clerical school for 1 year. The duration was 1 year at the time.
And what was the type of training you received at the clerical school?
Clerical school, I was instructed in typing, shorthand. Greek was the type of shorthand at the time, and bookkeeping.
What work did you do after finishing your training at the clerical school?
After finishing my training there, I was posted to the police department, immigration section. I was supposed to take over from Mr. Jack. But shortly, the policy changed, and then Commissioner of Police, I think, persuaded government that immigration matters and licensing matters, because we were a small country, should be under the purview of the Commissioner of Police, who was head of the force at the time. So at that stage, I was posted to the Pay and Quartermaster's office, in those days known as PQM. This office was responsible for the payroll, pensions, stores, indenting, including administration. In those days, all government purchases abroad were done through the Crown agents. Whatever was needed by whatever department, the intending was indenting was sent to the Crown agents who were responsible to acquire these things and ship them. For their part in it, they were entitled to 12.5% of whatever the cost was. Thank you.
And for how long did you work as a civil servant? Microphone, sir.
I ended my career there in 1961 when I resigned and went over to my place, Basse, to go into politics.
Which party did you join when you resigned your job, went back to Basse and joined politics? Microphone, sir.
When I got to Basse, I found most of the youths, traders and elders, including my own parents, members of the United Party that was headed by the late P.S. Njai. I should add that I, with my colleagues, late Michael Balde, late Asan Musa Kamara, late Demba Nyagana, and late Keba Diba.
Sir, I noticed that you have a copy of your statement, and you are referring to it to make this testimony. I'll just encourage you to put it aside a little bit and just speak, just answer the questions that I have to ask. I am certain that you would be able to answer without referring to it. But if we need for you to refer to the statement, we would let you do so. But for the meantime, just answer the questions without looking at the statement. Can you do that, sir?
Very well.
Thank you very much, sir. You said when you went to Basse, you found that many of the people you knew belongs to the United Party, and you also joined the United Party. Is that correct, sir?
Very correct.
Which year excuse me, let me rephrase this. Did you have the opportunity to contest in any elections while in Basse? Microphone, sir.
Yes, the answer is I contested the 1962 general elections. It was when the franchise was first extended to the rural areas.
In which constituency, sir?
In the constituency of Tumana.
I assume under the UDP party, correct? Sorry, UP party. Sorry, I'm just coming from Freetown and this of UD. Sorry about that, my own lapse. The UP party, right? Can you tell us briefly about the leadership of the UP party at the time?
The United Party was headed by the late P.S. Njai, and he had at that time the deputy leader was Rene Blaine of blessed memory. But later on, it changed, and Idi Njai became the leader. Now, Secretary General was John Foster, late John Foster, and Treasurer, I think, was Musa Job, and was a host of other executive members, including myself, including all the elected members of parliament and the elected members of Batos Town Council.
At this stage, who was the highest Gambian working in government? Who was the Gambian who occupied the highest position in government, and what was the name of this position? Microphone, sir.
P.S. Njai was the first chief minister in 1961, I think, up to the succeeding elections, just before the succeeding elections. He was the chief minister, and David Jarrah was one of the ministers. I remember Michael Balde and Icho Semekejane were members of the cabinet. The cabinet in those days was headed by the governor, and the chief minister, which is a post preceding, in order of precedence, came first, according to the constitutional setup at the time. And with constitutional improvements, you have a premier, and then you have prime minister, and whatever. But P.S. Njai was the first chief minister who headed government at that time.
Thank you very much, sir. This is very interesting. It talks about the constitutional developments in Gambia at the pre-independence period. So in 1962, you contested the seat in Tumana constituency. What was the outcome of that election, sir? Turn on your microphone, sir. And
yes,
perhaps maybe
sorry.
you should leave it on.
I'm very new for this discipline.
Yes, leave it on. It's all right. And
the outcome was the Progressive People Party, that was headed by David Jarrah, won 17 seats. The United Party was headed by P.S. Njai, who won 13 seats. Before the convening of Parliament, the late Honorable A.B. Njai, veteran politician and elder statesman, had won for Democratic Congress Alliance one Banjul seat known as the Banjul Central. A couple of months, barely before the opening of Parliament, he crossed over, resigned from the alliance, and crossed over to PPP, which took their number to 18 against 13. In those days, the chiefs had their own electoral college. They were 25 in number, and they used to elect 8. That was introduced by the chief minister at the time. Now, there was a bit of wrangling. The chiefs, at the beginning, through their allegiance to the United Party, we have given them 21. But I will not want to give an opinion on my next statements. Politics is of some interesting nature sometimes. After a while, after a couple of days, the chiefs whose head leader, paramount chief, was the late Alhaji Omar Mbake, and was also spokesman for the chiefs, was invited after both David Jarrah and P.S. Njai had gone to the governor and each claimed that he had majority. Omar was disappeared for a couple of days, about 3-4 days, and when he came, the governor invited him. He threw the way to the chiefs on the side of David Jarrah. So David Jarrah was asked to form a government, and he was appointed premier.
by premier, you mean prime minister?
Premier is the next stage in, I think, the British political evolution or constitution or whatever. You have a premier, chief minister, premier, and then prime minister.
Thank you very much for that clarification. It's an important one for students of constitutional history in the Gambia. Thank you very much. what did the election mean for you, for your career? Did you win your seat?
Sometimes my hearing can be very funny. Can you
yes, I will speak up louder, sir. Did you win your seat in Tumana? Did you win the election in which you contested?
Yes, I had said so. I won, and I was in parliament.
And you kept winning that seat in all elections for the next 30 years, correct?
That is correct.
Did you continue to remain a member of the United Party after David Jarrah became premier?
No, I think in around 1970, 71, I cannot be very precise on dates. It's taken a long time, and I've been involved with so many things. But around 70, 71, by that time, the United Party had some very serious ups and downs. Late Idi Njai was made leader of the opposition in parliament because the late P.S. Njai had some rough relationship with the then governor and the then premier. After several attempts were made to collate. And in the end, late P.S. Njai became very negative and towards parliament. And as a result, his seat was expelled, more sort of, and Idi became leader. And around the time also, Idi, when Idi was leader in parliament, I was deputy leader. Unfortunately, Idi died in an accident shortly, and the leadership in parliament became vacant. Efforts were made by the then National Executive of the United Party, meetings held at the Odeon Cinema, to appoint me as leader of the party. I declined. The pressure was too much. I was young, absolutely and totally unprepared for that mammoth task, especially having Jesse Fai, late Jesse Fai, Jahumpa, and others as party leaders on the opposite side. I did not consider myself at the time being suitable or able to lead the opposition in parliament. That together with parental advice, I went over to the PVP.
But before all this happened in 1970 and 1971, the Gambia had changed at this period. We had become independent. Can you tell us what role, if any, you played in securing Gambia's independence?
Well, in 1964, after much agitation and discussions, it was wind of change, as late Prime Minister Macmillan coined, had blown over all Africa. And we were invited to Marlborough House after several meetings and discussions, debates and what have you in the country. We were invited and we went to Marlborough House in London and discussed with the British government the question of independence. Now, United Party, I was a delegate on the United Party side. PVP had their own delegation. Because of this, and these were based on the strength of the parties in parliament. Because the Democratic and Congress parties were small parties, together they had won 1 seat in the general election. And that seat by Ebinjai went over to PPP. They hatched a coalition with the PPP, which I think was very clever, because in those two parties we had extremely well-talented politically on politics. And when they hatched out that coalition, the PPP leadership allowed them 2 members, and they selected the late I.M. Gawajampa and the late J.C. Faye. Also at that conference.
By late J.C. Faye, you're referring to the late Reverend J.C. Faye, correct?
It's correct, Reverend J.C. Faye. He was like a father to me, and who were very nice. He spent most of his time at Krisikunda. He opened Krisikunda, a correction center, also a school. Now, I remember Emi Jallo was nominated, formed part of the delegation, was leading trade unions to represent the workers. Also was Mrs. Palmer as an independent member. The late Aman Bake, head chief, was also there. So that was the composition, and we went to Marlborough House and discussed. There was, I must say here, that there was not very many differences between the two sides of the spectrum. We all wanted independence, and we wanted it immediately. But what type of independence did we want? My side, the United Party, which was in opposition, wanted a monarchical system independence. That is, you are independent, fully fledged, you run your affairs wholly and totally. But the organization that had been formed earlier, known as the Commonwealth, which is the successor of the British Commonwealth, with the advent of independence, the word British was removed, and it remained colonial, just Commonwealth. Now, it had provided a very good forum and organization or institution that already was doing a lot of good to emerging African countries who were under the British system. So we, the United Party, preferred that to continue after independence. The only snag for some African leaders was overzealousness or over exuberance about independence. To say that you are independent, you have a prime minister and a governor general, but the queen is the sort of figurehead, although she had no say whatsoever in the running of the country. But as I say, independence was new. Some dynamic leaders like Nkrumah and others felt that it has to be absolute, that they have nothing to do, which on hindsight, people know, did not carry much merit. So that was our stance. The Progressive People Party wanted a Republican style of government, where a president is elected. At that time, the question of membership to the Commonwealth was not on. You go by yourself. Now, we argued it there, I think, for a day or two. And later, the British Commonwealth, Foreign and Commonwealth Secretary, Duncan Sands at the time, because when we retire, all sides meet. For them, they had only one, the government, Colonial Master. But for us, we had two parties, and Emi Jallo, Jarrah constituted was a very formidable trade unionist, very intelligent man. So after we retired, we came and we did not change our positions. Now the British government came with a suggestion, compromise suggestion, that they will grant us independence. Sorry, I should have said, apart from the type of independence, the composition of parliament and the executive was also discussed, because the Progressive People's Party wanted a separate House of Chiefs modeled on the House of Commons, House of Lords. We did not want that. And there was another minor, or not quite minor, but difference. So, but for this one, it was very important. So the British government took that first. Said, okay, now we are suggesting, since you will not budge either party, these people don't want a House of Chiefs. They want the 8 members currently in Parliament to remain as members of the Chiefs. This thing. You, the PPP, wanted a separate House of Chiefs. Then I think it was Duncan Sands who said, well, look, Gambia is a small country. The total number of chiefs you have is 25. How can you create a House of Chiefs even for just 25 members when Parliament is 32? And question of expenses and all connected infrastructure came in. So we had a break, we had several breaks in fact. And the last one, they came with a compromise that we will have the chiefs and maintain one parliament. We agreed. And then they said, okay, our reasons for not wanting a Republican style government was plain. I have said it elsewhere in interviews, both here and outside. Of the veteran politicians we had at the time, only Jarrah, David, was not tested. That's a fact. He had come from studies, a veterinary surgeon, head of the veterinary, resigned, went into politics, 1960. In 1964, we were talking about independence. And what I'm saying here is not my own invention. In Banjul at the time, before Jarrah came back, those who were here, 60 and above, I think will remember at the beginning of things, politics was a bit rough. The Sonkunda case, Garba case, Gunjur here, and many other places. People were locked up, mostly members of the PPP. And I am not saying this to run down anybody. History should be said as it happened, should not be doctored for any reason. People in Banjul in those days, and many of them would be alive by now. People, when they came to Grand Street with their asikos, they used to go around, some used to go around, not everybody, and they were pinpointing buildings and properties and saying, when we get independence, we are going to take this and that. There were a few story buildings in Banjul then. These are facts. So, if you put all this in a cauldron, the suspicion will boil over. So, the reason for us, PPP, or United Party, wanting a monarchical government was that there will be a referee or umpire. Because in the Commonwealth, the Queen is the head, no power, no authority, but she retains privately or publicly residual authority. in many forms. So that it was the view of the United Party that whoever, it was JC5, Jahumpa, or PS, these people have been in politics for over 10 years. The wrangling of people have developed understanding of their perimeters of their nature, character-wise. So that was the reason. And that was the reason why when Jarrah, after independence, attempted a true referendum to change the constitution, it failed. It did not fail because Gambians did not want a Republican government. By the second attempt, members of the United Party voted for it, some, and it massively went through. Because by then, the Gambian public had a better idea of David Jarrah's temperament and the way of the style of his leadership. So, after elections, he's already there. There's nothing you can do about it. Why worry about retaining monarchical system where you have a duplicity of authority? So, the second referendum succeeded, and Gambia was declared a republic.
That would have been in which year, sir? 1970 referendum, you said. And did your alliance or your allegiance in politics change at around that period? Did your political allegiances change during that period? Microphone, sir.
That is correct, yes.
Can you explain that change and how it came about? Microphone, sir. You can leave your microphone on.
Yeah, I have alluded to this question earlier, that where Idi Jai was an excellent politician who was hailed, acclaimed by the entire society. He was very popular, he was not controversial, condescending, very, very nice gentleman. And to a great extent, PS had some major problems. His family know that. The people close to him know that. So with Idi around, everybody, late Numukunda Dabo and myself, who was a very powerful member of parliament, were wooed. President Jarrah is alive. We had several dinners at #1 Marina, but we maintained our stance. Because Idi was such a person that he developed some chemistry with the leadership, especially parliamentarians of the party, to an extent that the comradeship was very difficult to break. And we were very happy, all of us. But when he died, this is where the problem came. I've said it. There was a big vacuum of capable leadership to run the United Party at that juncture. And picking on me as a young man with no experience whatsoever, no major formal training whatsoever, to head the political party after independence in Africa, suicidal. No.
You were very humble at the time, considering the decision you had taken, but you participated already in negotiating Gambia's independence. You went into politics in 1961. By 1970, you were definitely already a veteran. You already had 9 to 10 years experience and also have this important feather on your cap, having participated in the negotiation of our independence. At this stage, you are not a political novice, but I recognize the humility with which you approach that issue. So you joined the PPP as a result, correct?
Thank you very much, but one swallow does not make a summer. It's not my own saying. That was to explain my situation better. you referred to one component of a whole set of paras of issues. That one is okay. I was well known in the country, very well known. No politician was better known at that time because I was young and stubborn and active. I left my little marks everywhere. But that is just one aspect of leadership relative in the context of this country. I did not have a penny. And in those days, political corruption, if I can refer to it as that, was different. In those days, it was the big people with money who donated to parties and contributions, and women especially. Women contributed. It doesn't matter whether you have a lot of gold or not, they contributed massively. But the public, the population, especially in the provinces, they give you money to buy petrol because you are using bicycles, and we hire trucks or kit cars. But they give you fuel, they give you a bull, they give you, all of us, you have had about 50, 80 bulls. By the time, that generation faded away. So that the voters, majority of Gambian voters, were supporting their MPs because they didn't have anything. Nothing. In Banjul, there was an element of Njigi Guru and what have you, because they were better financially. So that really, not only for me, but even if I had a ton of degrees, university, acclaimed universities, I could not, and I would not have accepted leadership. Even if I had had 30 years experience with my financial situation at that time, would have been suicidal. I cannot. And nobody in my stead would have done it. So this is my answer, if it satisfies.
Thank you very much, sir. Yeah. Then you joined the PPP in 1970, is that right?
Yes, around that time.
And did you hold any positions within the PPP party?
Yes, on joining the PPP, President made me a member of all the important arms of the party, namely the Congress, the National Executive, Parliamentary Executive, and the Politburo, at the time known as Secretariat, which comprised of the President and 4 assistant secretaries. I was one of them.
How about positions in government?
Positions in government, I held several portfolios. The first was information, tourism, and broadcasting, followed by education, youth, sports, and culture. Education was education and welfare up to my becoming minister. And when I became minister, maybe my age or President must have observed some characteristics. He carried out a minor reshuffle, not changing personalities or people, but he changed the nomenclature of the ministry. Instead of Ministry of Education and Social Welfare, which then was manned by Mr. Yunsin, assisted by a young man. He was responsible for youth, sports, culture, and the lot. With that minor reshuffle, President introduced Minister of Education, Youth, Sports, and Culture. And the second year or so, we organized for the first time the Youth Week, which was very popular. It was to galvanize the youth and get them ready for future undertakings because they were just all about, not organized. And also the sports aspect, a youth officer was appointed in the passing of Ibu Mbenga, late Ibu Mbenga. Sports, Cherno Ture, who during the junta was ambassador, was made sports officer. He was a PE expert. Culture, Alaji Mbai Chow, who with Siri Seka and others during independence were really doing very, very well for culture. In fact, they had relationship with Senegal and and they were having these national troops and ballets and what have you. So Baisha was elected cultural officer. Late Omar Sy, at one time foreign minister, was also had done much in sports and related matters, was appointed director under the minister. And during that time, cultural festival, youth week, sports council were formed for the first time in this country. As a result, I remained in that ministry for 5 years, the longest you can have a whole term.
And where did you move to after 5 years at the Ministry of Education, Youth, Sports and Culture?
I went to Economic Planning and Industrial Development. Was newly created.
That was up to 1977.
That was for a year.
Yes, in 1977. And
Yeah.
what happened after that?
I was appointed Minister of Finance and Trade.
That was in which year?
I think it was end of 77 up to 81, just 2 months before Kukoi.
And did you hold any other cabinet position in government after that?
Minister of Works and Communications was my last.
Which year was that?
I know it ended in 1990.
That's right. It would have started in 1987. Is that right?
Yes.
Now, you know that the Gambia experienced a coup d'etat in 1994. Do you remember that event?
Very vividly, I remember.
Can you tell us how you came to know about that event?
Well, one morning, early 22nd July, must be about 4 a.m. or 4:30, one of my relations and friend, late Alaji Usainu Njai, he was the eldest son of an eminent personality in this country, Alaji Musa Njai. He rang me, woke me up, and told me, you better stand by, get ready, and organize yourself. The soldiers have mutinied, and they have killed Kikala Balde. Kikala Balde was a senior army officer in charge of the armory, and he hails from Basse.
Mr. Cham, excuse me, sir, but that event would be 1981, wouldn't it?
No, sorry.
The killing of Kikala Balde.
No, sorry, you are right. I'm getting it mixed up. It's 24 years now or more. No. This soldier, last soldier coup,
1994.
I got to know
27.
about it. My first wife, I was having some building works at Jarrah, opposite the station. And my first wife told me, take me to Serekunda market and drop me there because it's cheaper. This cooking stuff cheaper, vegetables and what have you. I took her with 2 of the workmen, and the houses, outhouses they were constructing, the roof at that time. One of them housed the sing-artists for a period. So we came to the market. I stopped by off the road on the side of the police station. And then suddenly, before she came, I saw people running helter-skelter. And she came running also, went in, and the 2 carpenters were in there. There was big confusion at the Serekunda market. Then everybody said, MC, I said, no, before I go, I must know what am I running away from, and from what area, from what side it is coming, so that I can avoid it, if possible. So I stood there until everybody had disappeared. Then somebody came on a bicycle. I stopped him. Shilo Defi, what are you doing here? I told him, look, what is happening? He said, along the Banjul highway, the soldiers are stopping cars, beating up drivers, taking the keys and throwing them away. I say, along the road. I say, Mangi, he told me, we crossed at Churchill Town. I told my wife, let's go to Pipeline, my residence opposite where Mom, one of my wives, who is here, lives, opposite Cairo station. I said, let's go there until we know, until the dust settles. We drove there. That time, Banjul did not know what happened, because when I rang, Usainu and Tafango, nothing, it was normal. About 30, 40 minutes, or nearly an hour later, they rang me to say that there is a coup going on. We stayed there for 3 days because there was a curfew. I stayed there with my first wife for 3 days. When the curfew was lifted, we went back to Banjul. And of course, during the announcements, I knew that Edward was among the leaders.
Edward who, sir?
Edward Singate.
Did you know him before?
Oh, yes, I know him. I know his father, Saiba, converted to Catholicism while we were in school in Basel and had the name of Gabriel. We were in Basel school together. We came to Banjul, St. Augustine's together. At around Form 3 or so, he left and joined the medical, because in those days, the departments were hungry for young, educated, or young schooled young men. They visit schools and invite people, not necessarily waiting for you to complete. And he was among the batch who went to the hospital known as Royal Victoria Hospital and was a dresser dispenser. After a while, he stowed away, you people will not know it, but that used to be the idea. That is, these vessels coming to pick up groundnuts.
That was the first back way.
No,
isn't
not
it?
back way, the stowaway.
Yes, that was the first
Back way is a later invention. So, unfortunate. Now, he stowed away and went to England and joined the RAF medical unit, because we follow up our progress, birds of the same feather. I know that he met his wife, who was also a nurse, an Irish girl, in the RAF, and they got married, who is Edward's mother. Now, I think it must be in the 80s or late 80s or 90s. He came to my house. Of course, before that, I used to see him now and again. He comes to my store. You know, I see him almost weekly when he comes to Banjul, and we chat. But this evening, he came to my house. My wife was there, and one of my friends died after. He came and told me, I understand you own these 2 little outhouses. One was occupied by a white man who was some technical knowledge. He used to make doors and windows and what have you. And the other one was vacant. I said, yes. He said, I want you to give it to me. I have nowhere to stay. They have removed the roof. He was staying in a house near Teresa's. He said they have removed the roof. They have started removing the roof.
Owned that house near Teresa's?
I think it was owned by the late Alhaji Modu Musa Njai.
That would be Mr. Hussein Njai's father,
correct? His father. He was there as a tenant for some time, but he never paid. And the old man wanted...
He never paid what?
Rent.
Thank you.
Now the old man, I think, wanted to dispose of the place or wanted to build it. And asked him to leave for months. He was there. And according to him, he told me all this. According to him, one morning a carpenter came and started removing He asked the man to stop, I think, but they removed some few corporate sheets and said they were directed and they will go ahead. That was the time he went out looking for me. He found me at Pipeline and he told me about this problem. I told him, well, that house is ready. 1, it's not painted. 2, it has no running water. 3, no electricity. He said, MC, I'm telling you, I have no roof over my head. You are telling me about facilities. I say, if you want to go in there like that, fine. I went up, brought keys, I gave him. And he moved over there. And I assisted him.
Did he move
Cyber.
there alone?
No, he moved there with his children, his wife and children.
Who were these children you're referring to?
Oh, Edward and Peter, I know, and Dennis.
Can you give me their full names, sir? Full
Peter,
names?
Gabriel Singate is the father. Edward Singate is the eldest son. Peter Singate. Dennis, also Singate. They moved. And I assisted him. He paid for the meters, water and electricity, but I assisted him. I used my little influence to help him get these facilities quickly. And he was staying there with them. And I think they joined the army there while they were there. They were very nice people, as far as I was concerned at the time. When my wife went to the market and they're around, when she comes off the vehicle, there is a distance to get into the compound. The road, there is about maybe 50 meters or more. Now, there have been many instances when they will pick up her bag and help her in. They were very nice to my family there. Now, one day, I came to the house, and my wife showed me a white shirt, fully covered with blood. It was looked very bad. I told him, what is it? What are you showing? He said, this was brought by Edward Singate last evening, but you were not here. I said, why? He said, Dr. Baba Njai, Modu Musa's son, is the one who just beat the hell out of him, was bleeding from the nose and from the mouth. And he had gone to the police opposite, but he asked them to hold on. He was going to see the elder of both of them. I asked my wife to call him. We went over, called him.
You mentioned Dr. Baba Njai,
yes,
son of Modu Musa Njai.
Yes.
So far you've mentioned 2 children of Modu Musa Njai. You're referring to the same Modu Musa Njai, father of Usainu Njai and father of Dr. Baba Njai, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Then I told him, I said, but what brought the fracas? What brought the trouble? He told me, well, I scaled over the wall, which into the street. You have Baba Njai exactly, Dr. Baba exactly opposite. He scaled the wall, and Baba saw him and stopped him and said, don't you know that this property belongs to my brother? Where are you from? He said, he told Baba that I live in this house. Gabriel Singate is my father. We are living here in this outhouse. Baba said, yes, but you should never scale, because I taught you to be a thief or a bad person. Go around. This is not safe. If anything, if people see you frequenting this, someday it may be a real thief and nobody will bother. He told me that. Then I asked him to go and withdraw the case. I will get Baba and I will apologize. He left. The next day I called Baba, and Baba gave me the full story. Said on the first occasion he let him off. But on the second occasion, he argued with him and he said he was a bit nasty. Baba is a strong lad. And Baba, did what he did. So I told Baba...
What did Baba do?
Baba knocked him, of course. Baba agreed that he inflicted he was responsible, that shirt, maybe the shirt he was wearing. Baba agreed. But he said because he was very nasty, and it was on a second occasion. I said, Baba, but you should have told me after he told you first occasion that he was staying. He said, no, I don't have to tell you when somebody violates your property in my presence. Fine. Now, I called Edward, and we apologized, and he did not do anything. He withdrew the case because Baba was not called to the station. Nothing happened.
At this stage, was Edward already in the army? Or
Yes, he was in the army. He was just he was there.
okay. When you heard this announcement that there was a coup d'etat, and you spent a few days at your home in Fajara, the curfew was lifted. At this stage, did you come to know that Edward was part of the coup leaders?
Yes, because he came when the curfew was lifted. See, I alternate between my wives, which is traditional. He came to the house. While I was not there, and spoke to my wife. He said, "Where is Uncle?" He said, "He's not here today." He said, "Well, I just came to tell him about the military takeover. We are responsible, but tell him I will be coming back when I will explain everything to him. Right now, I also, on behalf of my family, I want to give him, to inform him and to thank him for the hospitality of accommodating my family. We are moving to Daddy Job's house." I said, "Daddy Job, which Daddy Job?" He said, "Near the Pipeline Mosque." He said, "This is where the Nigerian commander used to be. He's living, and I am moving there with the family." When I came, Mom told me. But somehow, maybe it was never to happen. I have not seen him. Maybe he came back, I was not there, because I am only there in the evenings, and in the mornings I go back and do my own avocation, Yes. So I never saw him until my detention.
Were they paying rent while they were at your house?
No. Because his grandmother, was married to my father. And Momo Kotenja.
So they were living in your house gratis for all this period?
Oh yes, I will not charge them because Gabriel is regarded as a brother through marriage. And we grew up as children too in the same place, Base, Banjul, Banjul. No.
And at this time of the coup d'etat, what happened to Gabriel?
Gabriel died before the coup d'etat. He died shortly before the coup d'etat. He was admitted at Westfield. And I was leading in the funeral arrangements because his uncle, Sheni Singate, who was my parliamentary secretary in 1977, and my younger one, they are one father, is the next nearest relative to him. So Sheni informed me, and we did everything. And as our tradition provides or requires, when an elderly person is present, whether by marriage, by blood, by kith and kin, or by just being together for a long time, you are given the leadership role. And I was responsible. And we buried him at this Igbo town thing. It was a very wet day, and the pit was smaller than this thing, what do you call it, coffin. So the first attempt to lower the coffin, it collapsed. The whole thing was done all over again because the cement blocks were wet. So everything was, we were there for nearly 2 hours or more.
Thank you. I think this is a convenient time to stop for our first break. Mr. Chairman, over to you if any members of the Commission have a few questions to ask. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Council. And thank you so much, Uncle MC. It's good to see you. I haven't seen you for years. I wasn't sure what I would see when you walk in. And you're still looking elegant and really sharp mind. Marlborough House, conference, recalling events from there, to somebody not paying rent. I mean, that's extraordinary mind that you have. But it's good to have you here.
Thank you.
Is there any member who would have any question to ask? Yes, Commissioner Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question. You got into politics when you were very young. I'd like to know what was youth involvement in politics at that time, like youth and women involvement in politics.
Can you say that again?
You got into politics at a young age. Are you getting?
He's not hearing you.
Yes, I got in.
Yes, I just want to know what was youth involvement in politics like at that time?
Youth involvement
in politics?
In politics, it was comme ci, comme ça, because, you know, in any meaningful avocation or meaningful participation, there must be a motivating force. And that was the dawn of politics, and the motivation was very low. What motivation there was at the time was to support people to go through parliament and to try and bring good to the country, change bad laws, provide better standards, and so on and so forth. So, as I have said earlier, the actual mobilization in the recognized progressive form as it is or should be was started by my own humble self as Minister of Youth, Sports, and Culture, including education. So it was just comme ci, comme ça. I would not say it was not there, but it was not organized, nor was there any direction.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, we would take a 30-minute break and come back at 12 noon. Uncle, thank you so much. Meeting is